Oleksandr Usyk is rematching Tyson Fury December 21st this weekend. I don't need to go into detail about both fighters because we all know who they are. We've all seen the first fight, we know that Usyk won, but there's still some controversy about that first fight. Some people believe that Fury won, some people believe it was a draw. Fury himself said it was an easy fight, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm here to explain why in the rematch I think it's even easier for Usyk. One thing that I've noticed going into this second fight is that looking at the predictions of other people into Usyk's career for a long time, and who hasn't, the perspective some people seem to have on the first fight is that it was competitive action in the first 4 rounds. Both boxers were landing their shots, but based on Fury's showboating, it looks like he was doing a bit more than he was. There were some varied scorecards going into the first 4 rounds. Most people had it tied up dead even 2 rounds to 2 going into round 5, but in rounds 5 and 6 is where Fury really started to work. In those 2 rounds, Fury really started to find his rhythm. He was catching Usyk clean, especially with body shots, but also to the head. He was moving well, and it seems like the fight was going to turn in his favour. And I will say that these 2 rounds are where Usyk was in the most trouble in his career. We've seen Usyk in trouble before, but not quite to that extent. But then obviously in round 9, the famous moment happened where Usyk lands a massive left hook on the chin of Tyson Fury. He stumbles backwards. Usyk then proceeds to batter Tyson until he collapses in the corner. The ref calls a standing count. Fury makes the count, makes it to round 10. Usyk picks up where he left off, continues to land on Tyson, who is still trying to recover. Fury recovers quite well, makes it to round 12. The final round being close, it goes to the scorecards. Usyk is crowned the undisputed champion of the world. Now, if that's how you remember the first fight going, I can understand why you're picking Tyson Fury to win the rematch. All Fury has to do is take it a bit more seriously, do less showboating, and do the same thing he was doing in the first half of the fight. But with Usyk, that's not quite how it works. Pay attention to the fight on screen. Usyk is facing Tabiso Machinu, a slick southpaw, a boxer known for being very awkward and hard to hit properly. Usyk has some real issues, closing the distance and landing the right punches in the first few rounds, but Usyk found his range, and eventually it was a one-sided fight, where Usyk kept landing on Machinu. He knocks him down 2 times in the process, and then finally put him away for good in the 9th round. Fast forward a few years later, Usyk faces Tony Bellew, and similar to Machinu, Bellew does really well for himself in the early rounds. He's fighting mainly off the back foot, and he's catching Usyk plenty of times, especially with shots to the body. But Usyk gradually across the fight started to find his timing. He'd adjusted and started to catch Bellew in between punches, and Bellew's feet had slowed down, which allowed Usyk to land easier. The reason I've chosen to show the Bellew and Machinu fights in particular is because of their similarities to Tyson Fury in terms of their styles. They're slick movers, they're hard to hit clean, and some of Bellew's punches happen to be very similar to what Fury was landing. And they both got stopped in similar stages of the fight after doing well early on. And that takes us to a proper breakdown of the first fight. I think after rewatching the fight, I think people are forgetting how well Usyk did in the early stages of the fight. While Fury was moving well, he was getting caught on the chin many times, even in the first few rounds. The rounds were close, but Usyk was landing the bigger punches. Usyk made it a point to invest to the body early in the fight, and also put the pressure on Fury from the very start of the fight, which may have contributed to Fury slowing down later on. This was an unusual approach for Usyk to take in the early part of the fight, because against this style of fighter he usually takes his time. But I think Usyk knew that he couldn't afford to lose any rounds against this calibre of fighter, as it was Fury who seemed to be the one taking his time, and that became apparent in rounds 5 and 6, where, as I mentioned before, is where Fury really started to pick up. Fury did seem in complete control, and I will say that is the most trouble Usyk has been in his entire career in those 2 rounds. But it's important to mention that that is in fact only 2 rounds. 2 out of 12 rounds of the whole fight. And after rewatching, I honestly think those are the only 2 real convincing clear rounds for Fury. I gave rounds 2 and 4 to Fury, but I would not be surprised if you gave those 2 rounds to Usyk if you scored on a different criteria. Not to mention, after that hard round 6, I gave Usyk rounds 7 and 8, as Usyk started to pick up again, and he was actually landing cleaner than ever on Fury's chin. Which brings us back to my idea that Usyk always has another level to give, another gear to get to, which other fighters don't seem to have. He cut open Fury's eye with a big right hook in round 8, and the momentum seemed to be really shifting in Usyk's favour way before the big punch in round 9. And by the second half of round 9, Usyk lands that massive punch. Fury stumbles backwards. He's the most hurt he's ever been in his career. Usyk proceeds to beat the shit out of Fury for the next minute. Fury somehow survives, and he looks completely defeated watching the count. And this brings us to a separate point. I believe that Fury's chin has really regressed compared to how it used to be. After being dropped several times by guys like Deontay Wilder, Steve Cunningham, his chin would have taken a toll. Especially when you consider that Joshua went 24 rounds with Usyk and never went down once. After round 9 the pace had really slowed down. Fury basically took round 10 to take his time and recover. Fury eventually found his groove again and made it competitive in the final 2 rounds. But even then, I honestly gave Usyk the last 3 rounds. I think people gave Fury the last 2 just out of shock that he survived that round 9. And obviously Usyk won the decision. You can give some swing rounds to Tyson Fury, like round 1 and round 12, but I only give Tyson Fury 4 rounds of the fight, and I'm very confused as to why people think that Fury should have won. At worst, it's 6 rounds to 6, which still goes to Usyk because of the 10-8 round in round 9. And I find it hard to believe that Fury, in a rematch, can take 7 rounds away from Oleksandr Usyk. I think Usyk always has another gear to go to, whereas Fury doesn't. We've seen that in the first fight. We know Fury was hurt more in the first fight than Usyk was. So unless Fury knocks him out early, I don't see a path to victory for Fury in a rematch. Usyk by TKO in round 11. Goodbye.